Hey y'all, Coach in the Fight here, coming out of the Third Testament of the Bible, talking about resurrection versus reincarnation. Now, we've done this class a few times in the past. I think the last one was almost an hour long. And in this one, I want to prove by way of the scripture the facts surrounding incarnation versus resurrection. Now, the reason why I want to do this, and particularly now, is there is an individual who has got the copyrights, I guess, for lack of a better term, to be able to print the Third Testament of the Bible. He's contacted the people, the proper authority mission to go ahead and print, and he's about to print off in the first run about 100 copies of the Third Testament of the Bible. He will be selling those. Look for some information on our channel coming up here soon, if you see this video in a timely manner, on how much it's going to cost and how you can actually request of the Third Testament of the Bible. But in leading to that, we're already getting comments, people who have glanced in on the Third Testament of the Bible. One of the things that makes people question the legitimacy of the Third Testament of the Bible is the fact that it talks about reincarnation. It speaks of it pretty often in the book, because as a book that contains spirit and truth, it is working to clarify how it is that our spirits will be brought back to life in the end times. Would it be by way of resurrection, which commonly understood as dead bodies coming back to life somehow, or would it be in the form of reincarnation, which means that we get a brand new body? So I wanted to come in and I wanted to clarify, that, like I said, I'm going to look over in a certain part of the scripture to show you. But first of all, I want to come into one of the places in the Third Testament that talks about it. This is up here in chapter 30 of the Third Testament, called The Development of the Spirit Through Reincarnations. So this will be an entire chapter that talks about reincarnation. But one verse, maybe two, that I wanted to focus in on is down here in verse 9. This is in a section it off, called The Resurrection of the Flesh Properly Understood. Verse 9 says, "Now the world will know the truth about resurrection of the flesh." Now the world will know the truth about the resurrection of the flesh, which is the reincarnation of the spirit. Now, when you think about that, it should sink in. It shouldn't be that hard, that difficult to understand. I believe for many people, the problem comes in that there are other religions that teach reincarnations. And since the Christians teach resurrection, they think it is a conflict in the Bible or conflict in religions. Well, what I'm going to show you over here is how the Bible was actually changed. Let's jump over here to the internet right quick. Let's see. We're coming over here to Google, and all I did was I went in and did a search for Justinian changed the Bible, changed resurrection, changed reincarnation to resurrection. All you have to do is look these terms up: Justinian, resurrection, and reincarnation, and you can find some facts related to how this guy took it upon himself to actually change the Bible. He actually changed it. And I'm going to show you proof there in a second, undeniable proof here in a second. But look right here what it says. This is one website, and there's going to be, there's dozens you can find on this. If you just scroll down through there, you can see lots of websites. The Church's Biggest Lie, Popes Arrested for Believing in Reincarnation, Reincarnation in the New Testament. These are website after website that's going to give you details on how the Bible was actually changed. But just for the sake of time, I'll just read this, what it says right here. It says, What is this? This is Reincarnation, the Church's Biggest Lie. Facts.com says in the year 533 AD, 165 church officials condemned reincarnation. So this is little over 500 years after the Messiah had taught everybody, what he wanted them to know. Here you have these 165 church officials. Now, this would be Catholic church officials, no doubt. You remember that Catholicism was the Christianity until you had Martin Luther, who came, after the 1500s. Over 1,000 years later, do you ever get, things like, or people like Baptists or Methodists or who we know today as, holiness or Pentecostals, and those people didn't exist. Everybody in 1553 was a Catholic. Everybody who claimed to be a Christian was a Catholic. So this is the Catholic Church. 165 Catholic churches condemned reincarnation, that Christian theology would so essentially change with the ascension of Justinian. I'm sure if I clicked on that, what it's going to show you is how this Justinian, and I believe it was his wife, who actually went in and actually changed the Bible. It says in 553 AD, 165 church officials condemned reincarnation. Prior to that, it had been a fundamental Christian teaching following the trail of a conspiracy that changed the world. So understand that it was a fundamental Christian teaching, or they should have said fundamental biblical teaching until the year 555. So you think about that for a second. All of the authors who had wrote the scripture up to that point taught reincarnation, but it was these guys in 553, these 165 church officials, who decided that they actually knew better, and they went in and had the words changed in the Bible. We're on this same website. You see down here where it says reincarnation is a fact that is no longer a part of today's Christian beliefs due to one power-hungry woman who had all references to reincarnation in the early Bible removed. They changed the scripture, and so now you have Christians who are, will argue up and down that, reincarnation is not real or not legitimate based on what these 165 churches did. Now, I'm not a Catholic, and I don't, see the Catholics as an authority figure in my life in any way, shape, form. So what they did to the scripture doesn't really mean anything to me, except I'm looking for a way to undo everything they did to the scripture, like all of the hidden books that they took out. I've found a whole lot of those books, and I've read a whole lot of those books because, like I said, they're not an authority figure in my life, and I don't give them the right to tell me which books I can read and which books I shouldn't read. Well, the same way with reincarnation. If people like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Peter, and all of those guys were talking about reincarnation, then I give these Catholic Church no authority to actually change it and make me think that I'm supposed to believe in resurrection now. But anyway, let's go over here and let's show you some proof. So we're looking over here at this is a Interlinear Bible app that I have running on my little telephone thing here, and that reminds me, sorry if it's cutting out, this phone thing isn't acting right, but anyway, do the best I can with what I got. You see here all of the times in the Bible when the word resurrection is listed. You see over there all of the verses. If you want to take time, you can slow down the video, or take time and go in and look at all of the times in the Bible that you see the word resurrection. Now, I want to show you these because what I'm going to show you is that the word resurrection has actually been changed, and I'm actually going to show you some proof here. All right, there's the end. So you see all the times that resurrection is actually being used. Now let's come over and we're going to look at the Strong's number. You see that number there? G386 is the strong number for these times when the word resurrection is actually used in the Bible. Looks like they're all New Testament times, but and so you look there. Now I'm going to scroll back up and you see that they're all G85 or G386 with the exception of this one right here coming out of Philippians. In Philippians chapter 3, you see that verse 11 has a different Strong's number than in chapter 10. Now, let's jump over there and look at that right quick. Let's see. I did look over there at it, and it's kind of weird how those would actually have two different meanings, because there you see right there, Philippians chapter 3, verse 10 says that I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being made conformable unto his death. So that resurrection for some reason has one meaning, whereas verse 11 says, if by any means I might attain unto the resurrection of the death. All right, so let's go back over and let's look here. And let's see. So you have those two meanings. Now, notice right there where it's talking about the lexical transliteration over there on the right side of the screen. You see that in verse 10, which is the top one, is saying ex anastasis, whereas in verse 11, it says anastasis. And if we click on these, you'll see what they actually mean. You see, ex anastasis is a noun. The definition says a rising up and out resurrection. You see where it says from existime, a rising from death. Okay. So now you can compare that to what we see in G386. It doesn't really look like it is the opposite. It actually looks like it's saying the same thing, where the definition in this one says a standing up, a resurrection, a rising up or rising. Okay, so these look pretty close there. Let's see, the usage says raised to life again, resurrection, raised from the dead, that ye should rise, rising again. So now we're looking at this now, we're comparing this to what we saw over in the Third Testament, which says that the resurrection of the flesh, which is the reincarnation of the spirit. Verse 10 says, reincarnate, to return to the material world, to be born again as a man. So that's what it's talking about. Reincarnate is when we're actually born again as a man. It's not that the bodies are come back out of the grave, is that our spirit is brought back to life, is what's being taught over here in the Third Testament of the Bible. But let's jump back over here because I haven't really gotten to the proof yet. So we're going to close that out. I just wanted to show you that there was one time that, that you didn't see G386, and that was in the same chapter of the same books over there in Philippians chapter 3. But if we go over and we keep scrolling up, notice that the rest of these say 386. So we're going all the way through those verses that we looked at. All of these are this anastasis. 386, 386, 386. You see all of them say 386. So all of these are the same words, except what? There's another one right there. There's another difference right there. Let me scroll up to the top. That's to the top right there. So in all of the times that we see the word resurrection in the Bible, we see that there's actually two times that it doesn't have this code or this Strong's number of G386. One time, again over there in Philippians in the same chapter, used in the same subject, they were talking about the same thing, had pretty much the same definition. But let's look at this one right here. This G1454, Strong's number G1454. You notice how its transliteration is totally different. Its transliteration is e- 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 egersis, which, makes me think of the word aggression, right? Now, if you look at all of the other ones, they were this anastasis over there on the right, but this one right here stands out as being a whole different word here, right? So again, I hope you're following me, is that all throughout the time we see the word resurrection, but you see right here it's talking about something different. So we come back in here and let's look at it a little more closely. Definition says a rousing or a rising from death. Now notice how it's stressing the word from death here, right? Whereas the other ones were just talking about a rising or a coming back to life. This one is highlighting this part where it's talking about from death, right? You see that? Definition from death, origins from death, right? And that's all of the information it gives us on that. So what time is this talking about? Why is this talking about something different here? So if we scroll over here, we see that this is coming out of Matthew chapter 27, verse 53. So let's see what it's talking about. It's saying Matthew 27:53, and having gone forth out of the tombs, out of the resurrection of him, they entered into the holy city and appeared to many. So let's jump over there and let's look at Matthew 27:53 and see what that is. See what that's talking about. Matthew 27 and 53. All right. It says, and came out of the graves after his resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared unto many. So this is actually talking about the resurrection of the Christ. This is talking about the Messiah who was resurrected out of the grave. We know that he died and he actually was resurrected. And we know that because a little while later in the story, you find that he appeared before the disciples and he commanded them, especially Thomas, to put his finger in his wounds on his side, to put his finger in the same holes that he had. His dead body was now alive again and was walking around, and it still had the death wounds from when he was killed. So that's what it's talking about in this verse right here, is that his resurrection. Now that should something should be blinging in your head, because the Messiah, other than Lazarus in the New Testament, the Messiah was the only person that was brought back to life. And, he was the only person that was resurrected. But now let's look at Lazarus. You see the story of Lazarus being brought back from the dead in John and chapter 11. But now let's jump back over to our Interlinear Bible and see if John chapter 11 is actually listed. It's listed there in verse 24. Says him, Martha, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And 25 says, Jesus, I am the resurrection of the life, and the believing in me. So this is not actually talking about Lazarus in Isaac 8 the case. It's talking about, here it is, the Messiah saying that he is the resurrection in the last day in verse 25. And in verse 24, Martha is talking about the resurrection of the last day, but it's never saying that that Lazarus was actually resurrected. In fact, if you go back over there and you look at that verse, you see in that chapter that it is never talking about Lazarus being resurrected. It talks about him. He actually was resurrected, but it never says the word resurrected when it came to Lazarus at all. So my point is, okay, you have this word resurrection being used all this many times throughout the Bible, and it seems to all be talking about the same thing, except for when you actually see the one person who was actually resurrected in the Bible when the word resurrection was used, and it's got a whole nother word. It's not using the same word. And so my point is, okay, this 1454 was the one time when it was actually supposed to say resurrection. The Bible originally said resurrection one time, and it was talking about the Messiah, who we know for sure was resurrected. But every other time that you see all of this 386 was actually supposed to be reincarnation. Every one of these times was supposed to be reincarnation. Again, so we understand that the Catholic Church changed this, and we need to stop believing that what they did was right. Nothing they actually did to change the Bible was correct. They changed the times by changing the Sabbath day. That wasn't right. They shouldn't have did that. They changed the laws by changing the second commandment. That wasn't right. They shouldn't have did that. And we see they changed the scripture as well. That wasn't right. They shouldn't have did that. All right. So with all of that, I'm gonna say, go over, give the third testament of the Bible another chance, understanding that it is spirit and truth, and it has now helped you to understand that there will be no dead bodies coming back out of the ground, that the Father was actually talking about reincarnation, and we could give credit to his word for helping us to understand that.